All right, welcome to your deep dive on Smile 2. We're going deep on this one, see if the sequel, well, I guess, does it offer more than just jump scares? That's the big question, right?
Yeah, and from the sounds of this review, I mean, that's debatable. It seems like Smile 2 really takes everything from the original, the creepy smiles,
Mhm.
the whole curse passed on through trauma thing,
Yeah.
and, well, it amps it up.
Yeah.
But the question is, are they amping up the substance too?
Right, right,
That's what
yeah.
we're here to figure out.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. We've got Sky Riley, she's like this mega pop star, right? Trying to make a comeback after, well, a very public breakdown. Rehab, new album, world tour, and oh yeah, she's being tormented by this terrifying curse, this curse that makes people see their worst fears.
Oh, man, talk about a PR nightmare, huh?
Seriously.
Yeah.
And that's what I find so interesting about this. It's not just about, the supernatural stuff. It's about the pressure cooker of fame. I mean, imagine battling this horrifying, entity, this curse, and at the same time, you're supposed to be this picture perfect star for your fans. I mean, come on, that's got to mess you up.
Oh, absolutely. And the review actually compares it to, like, the struggles that we see a lot of celebrities going through in real life.
Yeah.
You see the headlines, the meltdowns, the pressure to always be on. So Smile 2, it seems like it's taking that very real anxiety and twisting it into something, well, terrifying.
Oh, 100%. And speaking of terrifying, the review calls out this opening scene, says it's really intense, darkly humorous,
Yeah.
which, I don't know, that's an interesting combo, and it kind of sets the tone for the whole film.
Right, and that's where it gets interesting because, I
Yeah.
mean, how do you blend those two, like terror and humor? What's the director doing? What are the visual cues, the dialogue? It's like he's trying to unsettle us on, like, multiple levels.
What? Yeah. And speaking of visuals, the review uses the words stylish and refined to describe the director's work, Parker Finn. And so I'm imagining, like, those really striking shots from the first film, this unsettling imagery, but maybe like a little more polished this time around.
It sounds like Finn is really playing with our sense of reality,
Yeah.
using things like those unconventional camera angles, lighting, editing, all to just create this constant feeling of unease. But, and this is a but, the review also points out his over-reliance on jump scares.
Okay, I was wondering when we would get to that. Look, don't get me wrong, I can enjoy a good jump scare as much as the next horror fan, but if there's too many, it gets old. It's like, boo, I jumped. Move on. I was really hoping Smile 2 would, I don't know, maybe lean more into atmosphere and the psychological thrills.
Yeah, and to be fair, the review does mention that some of the jump scares do work, but it acknowledges that, yeah, they might be a turnoff for some people who prefer, a little bit more subtlety in their horror.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of effective or not, the review seems to really praise Naomi Scott's performance as Skye. So tell me, does she carry this movie?
She does. The review says that she perfectly captures Skies, kind of that mental decline, under the weight of the curse, and then also her career, and they actually call it one of the highlights of the film.
It's interesting you mentioned that the review really praises her performance because it doesn't sound like Smile 2 shies away from like those really dark aspects of fame, that whole like be careful what you wish for thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like we really see that play out in her story, in Sky's story. Kind of reminds me of, you've seen those older horror movies where the monster represents some kind of societal fear?
Right.
It's not just the, like, literal curse that's horrifying, right? It's that whole idea of, like, unraveling in the public eye.
Totally. And especially now with social media and everything, like everybody's putting out their perfect curated persona.
Right.
It's like it's actually relatable, which is kind of scary. But okay, so we've talked about Sky, but what about the other characters? I mean, do they get that same kind of depth or are they just kind of there to, keep the plot moving?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And it does seem like the supporting characters might be a bit of a mixed bag. The review actually calls them one-dimensional and says they mainly serve to push Sky's story forward.
So not exactly winning any awards for character development then.
Well, not necessarily. It's like sometimes a horror movie really chooses to, like, focus intensely on one character's experience, right? You really feel like you're in their head. And so sometimes the trade-off is that other characters, they might not get as much development. It depends what you're looking for in a horror film, I guess.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so back to the scares for a second. We talked about jump scares, but the review also mentioned, I think, some impressive special effects and also creature design. What did it have to say about that?
Oh, yeah, they did. It sounds like they really took advantage of, I'm assuming, a much bigger budget for this sequel. The review uses words like impressive for the special effects and genuinely disturbing for the creature design. But, and this is a but, it sounds like they might have gone a little bit overboard.
Really? Too much of a good thing. I always thought more is, well, more when it comes to creatures and scares and all that.
Not always. Remember, we were just talking about how the original, like, it had that subtle approach. It left a lot to the imagination. The review, it kind of suggests that Smile 2 loses some of that subtlety by just showing too much.
Interesting. Like too much spice in the recipe.
Yeah.
Too little and it's bland, but too much and it kind of overpowers everything else. Okay, so they're saying that finding that balance is tough, but important, especially in horror. All right, so final verdict. What does the review say overall? Does it leave a lasting impression?
Well, it sounds like the review, it kind of stops short of like, giving it a glowing recommendation. Yeah, they called it a solid sequel, but not like groundbreaking or anything. They basically say if you like the first one, you'll probably be entertained.
Yeah.
Just, don't go in expecting some completely original masterpiece of horror.
Right, right. So it delivers on the scares, the visuals, but I don't know, maybe plays it a little safe overall.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like sometimes you just want a fun, scary movie, one that builds on what you already liked. But it's interesting. It does sound like Smile 2 is maybe trying to like have it both ways. Deliver those, classic horror thrills, but then also like say something a little deeper, about the world, about us.
Totally. Like that whole thing about fame being a double-edged sword, the pressure to like project this perfect image when really you're maybe kind of falling apart inside.
Exactly.
Makes you think about how we present ourselves, right? Like online, on social media.
Oh, 100%.
It's like everyone's got this highlight reel going, but what's like lurking underneath? You know?
And that's where Smile 2, it seems like it might really get under your skin. Even after the credits roll. It's that question. What happens when that pressure to keep up appearances, what happens when it just becomes too much?
Right.
Like, what does it do to us? Our minds, our relationships, who we are.
It's like those classic horror films that like use monsters as metaphors, right? For like real life anxieties.
Right.
Think about Invasion of the Body Snatchers or The Thing. I mean, those movies aren't just about aliens. It's about losing yourself, becoming something you don't even recognize.
Yeah, and in Smile 2, it's that fear, but it's like embodied in this curse, this entity that, feeds off trauma, forces you to confront like your darkest self.
Yeah.
It's like the movie saying we all have something to hide, but like what happens when you can't hide it anymore?
And what's scarier, the monster, or the idea that the monster is really just like a reflection of what's going on inside. That's the stuff that sticks with you.
Totally. It's that blend of like entertainment, but also like social commentary. I think that's what makes Smile 2 maybe a little bit more than, just a regular slasher film.
Yeah.
It makes you think. Maybe even makes you question some things about yourself, about the world.
So there you have it, your deep dive on Smile 2. It's got scares, for sure, a little social commentary. And from the sounds of it, Naomi Scott gives a performance that's, well, maybe worth the price of admission alone. It might not reinvent the wheel, but it sounds like a fun, entertaining and thought-provoking ride.
Just remember, it's not just about the jump scares and the creepy smiles.
Right.
It's about those masks we wear, the things we try to hide from the world and maybe even from ourselves.
Now, here's something to think about. What if you were Sky Riley, battling this terrifying curse, but you're also trying to, maintain your image? What would be your breaking point? Think about that next time you're putting on a brave face for the world. Until next time, happy watching.